Fato, fato, long, long ago, there was Hokum, a new film from Irish director Damian McCarthy.
What about the honeymoon suite?
It's always locked.
I first became familiar with Damian McCarthy when I watched his debut feature, Caveat, on the streaming service Shudder back in 2020. And I immediately knew that he was a talent to watch. Caveat was obviously a lower budget movie, and it had some uneven pacing issues and some other rough edges that are to be expected from a debut feature. But there is an extended sequence towards the end of the film where the protagonist is sealed inside of a wall, where I actually had to hit pause and take a little break. Now, I watch a lot of horror movies. That doesn't happen to me very often. So the dread was pretty intense. I realized then that McCarthy was someone I was definitely going to be hearing from again. Oddity came out in 2024, and I was a pretty big fan of that film. I like to say that if film schools ever teach a class on the perfect jump scare, Oddity should be required viewing, because Damian McCarthy has the art of the jump scare down to a science. The construction, the pacing is always spot on, and yet somehow he manages to keep the jump scares from feeling cheap or obvious. And now he's back with his highest budget, most high profile movie to date, Hokum. The story of Hokum follows a tortured American writer named Bowman, who is visiting Ireland to spread his parents' ashes. When he chooses to stay in the same hotel where his parents spent their honeymoon, his stay turns into a dark night of the soul, where he faces demons from both past and present. Hokum is very much a genre picture. It is driven more by plot than by its characters. When I say that characters aren't the focal point of this movie, I, of course, have to make the exception of the main character, Bowman. This is obviously someone who's embarking on a very specific type of journey as the movie begins, and we are taking that journey along with him as the audience. Hokum does contain a great many well-worn tropes. You have the haunted house movie, the tormented protagonist who has to face their traumatic past. You also have grief as the catalyst for horrific events, where supernatural entities are clearly meant to represent past trauma. And of course, you also have the familiar trope of the city character visiting an isolated country setting, which somehow enables them to face difficult truths about themselves. It has a lot of tropes, as I said. This movie doesn't exactly break any new ground, but the secret to the success of the movie is its execution. Is this movie a masterpiece? Does it have the wild artistic imagination or take the daring swings of an Ari Aster film? No. But what you get is an exceedingly well-crafted campfire tale about a soul trapped in the darkness trying to find a way out into the light. It's atmospheric, well acted, and I think highly rewatchable, which definitely distinguishes it from Ari Aster movies such as Midsummer, which, as much as I admire it, I have no desire to watch again anytime soon. I would call this a workmanlike piece of filmmaking. It's very competently constructed, it's well paced, and it's solidly acted, particularly by Adam Scott as the central character, Bowman. Without his performance working, the entire movie would fall apart. I'm not saying that he's the most likable character, because he most definitely is not, and I don't think he's intended to be. But as the movie unfolds, you start to learn more about him and understand why he is the way he is, and how much pain is actually motivating a lot of his behavior. You start by not really liking his character very much, but as the story unfolds, you do find yourself rooting for things to work out for him. One of McCarthy's favorite things to feature in his movies is confined spaces. As I said, Caveat had a sequence inside a wall. oddity takes place within the confines of a single house. When I saw this movie, and as soon as I saw that dumbwaiter, I knew we were going to be spending significant time in there. I will say one reservation I had about the film was the soundtrack. There are at certain points a chorus of spectral voices that kind of build up in the background. They're a little distracting. They're kind of too loud and too on the nose. Um, it took me out of the movie at certain points. But this is a relatively small nit to pick. Hokum may not be the scariest, most horrific picture you've ever seen, but it's not really trying to be. It wants to be a spooky, old-fashioned folk horror about facing your deepest fears, going into a dark passageway of the mind and trying to come out of the other end with a sense of catharsis, or even hope. This probably is the most hopeful movie McCarthy has done so far, which makes it legitimately crowd-pleasing in many ways. If you're looking for a cozy mystery vibe with some genuinely creepy moments, I highly recommend Hokum. I had a genuinely good time watching it, and I think you will too. Catch you later.